Hey, welcome back. ABOG, a band of gamers. Good to have you here.
Podcast episode 251.
Sure is. And if you're new to the show or if you haven't listened in a little while, this is our third to last episode. We announced in 250 that we're going to walk off into the sunset and leave this great podcast to rest. So 3 more, including
you late to the party, right?
Walking off the job.
So this is the third to the last episode, and we got a fun one here. We're going to go through our favorite episodes ever. We got 250 to choose from. We'll list out a few of our favorites. We've got what's in our pint glasses. Got an email. What are you laughing at me for, Shane?
No, I was just saying we got 250 to choose from. That is so true. Literally.
Yeah, a couple others.
I don't think
buried.
True.
Right? I think I had a walk-off at one point where after the first co-host quit, and I'm like, oh, I can't do it anymore, and I deleted that out of the feed. That one's not available anymore. So there's a couple extras out there.
Not necessarily a bad thing.
Yes, that one needed to go. No one wants to hear a sob story, and that's not what we're doing here with our final 3. No sob stories. Celebrating all things ABOG. Am I right?
Couple extra pints here and there.
Yeah. You know what? And since we're leaving, we can flip everything on its ass. Why don't we start with what we're drinking? Let's change things up a little bit. Let's just right out the top here. You guys ready? Shane may not be.
I'm not because I just poured a different beer. Oh man.
Yeah, we got a warm up beer.
Okay.
When we get to our
all right.
Well,
see,
just give me 1 second.
No, no need to slam it. We'll wait. My bad.
We could do it if we had to.
We could slam them, or we could.
Of course, yeah, we can. Of course, we can.
Chug. Shane's chugging.
Let's do it. Give me 1 second. Hold on.
All right. Well, the one I have is the one. Look at you guys. They are literally chugging their pint glasses. 1 drink for Shane. Straight up. Same with Karl. Man, you guys are pros.
God damn.
Platinum trophies for you guys and your beer drinking there. Whew. Well done.
Been a while since I've had to do that.
I wonder, this will be a good one now. You guys are all, you got a good start to 251.
Fired up, boys.
God damn.
I love it.
All right, new favorite episode.
Hold on, here we go.
Add it to the list. 251, my favorite. The one where we chugged a beer to start the show. Well, thank you for joining us. You can listen to our past episodes. We'll talk about a few of those past episodes, but we're everywhere. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iHeart. We're even going to leave our feed up for at least a year after we're done. So if you're just discovering us now, a couple more to listen to, but then you can go all the way back. I wouldn't suggest going all the way back, but back a ways. Listen to all of the goodness that we've had. Let's talk about that for a minute. Well, I almost forgot the intros. I'm Joel, your MC, recording in Brookfield, Wisconsin, USA. Joining me on this podcast journey, these 2 guys. First of all, from Birmingham, England, Steve Gerard. It's Karl. Did I say that wrong, Karl? I'm not sure how I was supposed to read that.
No, you said it right. Absolutely right, mate. It's been a whirlwind couple of weeks. Our manager got fired, harsh, and then we had an ex-Liverpool legend rock up at Villa Park, and he's now two for 2. So not a bad little couple of weeks of football action. And yeah, man, I'm buzzing already. That was a brave thing to do. Them be off the. This be a good one.
Yeah, we don't.
I said see Dino go, but.
It was, but he's
very smart. Sure, it's a very smart footballer. Like you mentioned, a Liverpool legend. It was, the ins and outs of everything. So it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good for the Villa.
Fingers crossed, mate. Fingers crossed.
The other voice you hear there from Vancouver, Canada. Who are you supposed to be? Well, it's Shane, of course. What's going on, Shane?
Hey, man. Howdy.
Hey,
man, that was good, man. Let's chug. Should do that for every episode.
maybe we shouldn't quit. Let's just keep on going, and we'll just keep chugging.
What?
Now what?
Yeah, there's some good beers today, boys. There's some real good beers happening today.
There always are. Well, let's get started in our favorite episodes. A little bit of a history lesson, though, from ABOG for those of you who haven't listened from the beginning, and I'm sure there aren't very many left of you who have, because we've changed the format. I don't know how many times. We started off as a community-driven website for video game reviews. This is way back in 2012, before there were all sorts of ways to review games like there are now. Shit, you can do it right on your console these days.
Right.
But we gave tools to a community to review games, to find some like-minded gamers to pal up with, if you will. Find some good games through your friends rather than through all these media sources, which we thought were pretty lame back then, and I think to this day still kind of do. The media is not who we depend on when it comes to choosing our games. Then my co-host left. I was stuck holding the ball, wondering what to do. Shane joined after a couple other guys kind of guest hosted. We brought in music, I think, right away when you joined, Shane. Is that right? And we kept gaming at like side A and music side B.
Yep.
And then over time decided to make music the focus. So that became side A, and then the gaming became side B. And then maybe later in time decided, this was a very short stint, but Shane and Karl would cover gaming and I would just do music with like guests. And we had Brett Newski on and we had Michael Mann as an interview, two interviews. Karl, of course, joined in this process, and shortly after, a year or two after Shane joined, Karl joined. So we've been together for 7 years. Is that right? I think that's right.
At least. Yeah.
I think my debut, if you like, was 2014. I think. Yeah, 7 years.
Yeah, so we've been doing this together 7 years. What other changes did we make? For a while, we featured a game and a record in every episode. Before that, we were playing music on the show. We would play songs almost like a jukebox where we'd talk about stuff and then we'd play a track or 4 or 5, getting permission from artists. And then maybe, 2-3 years ago, we stopped for a while, kind of took a hiatus. It was a quit, but then we joined and started doing it again. And I believe at that point, my timing might be off, but I believe at that point we decided, let's just do the gaming. Let's go full circle back to the beginning, not the reviews part, but just focus on gaming. And here we are. So for any of you, if there are any of you out there, please send us an email, shoot us a line, tweet at us, whatever. Let us know if you've been there since the beginning. It'd be great to hear from you. Great to know that we do have people still around, but a little bit of a roller coaster ride there. Sorry about that. Tried to keep things interesting for ourselves and kept it going we're in our 10th year at this point, because we started in August of 2012. So we're in our 10th year as of August.
Yeah.
That's some run.
A lot of changes.
Yeah.
But it keeps it fresh, right? Like, it kept us guessing. It must have kept the listener guessing as well.
It was all to keep us having a good time, right? Just keep it fresh, like Shane just said, and keep her going. Any other comments before we get into our favorite episodes about the format changes, or did I miss anything? I'm sure we did other weird shit throughout those our 9.5 years at this point, almost. You guys are staring at the sky.
No, I think it was, like you say, just it was more format changes, wasn't it? Really, just moving things around and then deciding to not do the more the music stuff and doing recommendations and things like that. Doing those every week or every 2 weeks, it just takes it takes a lot of time, doesn't it? It takes a lot of time and effort to find something for, if you like this band, then go and listen to this band. So there's a lot of work that goes along with that. And then obviously we've also been sporadic with episodes. Sometimes we were weekly, then we were like bi-weekly, and and then struggled to get together. Time differences are difficult. Anyone who does a podcast and has people in different time zones over the world, kudos, tip my hat to you, because it's not easy. That's the thing that takes up the most planning and organisation.
Yeah, for sure.
It's fun learning about getting permission and whatnot, and as we always did for every song we played and whatnot. But there's a handful where it didn't quite work out, where we kind of, I guess, wished it did. So it was interesting seeing kind of the relationship with record labels, and there's a couple artists that we'd find were with the same label and whatnot, and always speaking to the same person there, almost starting to build relationships that way and whatnot as well, which was really interesting. I always thought that was real interesting to just kind of experience that side of things. That was the fun part for me.
Yeah, one of the highlights for sure. Getting to know people in the industry, getting to know some musicians, some bands, some people at the record labels. Everybody always said yes for the most part when we asked permission.
Yeah.
But come to find out later, because at first it was such a new territory, playing music on podcasts. Nobody really knew how to handle it. So we'd come knocking like, hey, can we play your music? They'd be like, sure. But then I later realized you need not only the permission of the artist, but it's everyone who performed the song, the people who wrote the song, and the people who published the song. So you really need permission from all of the above. And early on, we get like Faith No More, for example, gave us permission. But the label gave us permission. Mike Patton and the band didn't give us permission. So I'm not sure that was technically correct, but who cares? There's a lot of podcasts out, even to this day, who just play music with no regard and
with wanton abandon.
Thank you.
Yeah,
it is true. It's such a murky world, though, and there's been occasions where we've approached. I have, approached an artist and be like, oh, we can play the tune. They're like, brilliant. And then, and the minute you mention ownership and rights and everything else, it all gets a bit, confusing. And even the artists sometimes don't know who to approach or who's got ownership of what. So it's certainly been an eye opener, I think, for the murky world. But we've played some brilliant bands on the show, and it's opened my eyes to different genres of music, and I'm sure we'll talk on another episode of the bands that we've introduced to each other. But just listening to the show before I even got on, the amount of stuff that you guys have introduced to me has just been awesome.
Yeah, same. You guys have turned me on to some great music, stuff I never would have thought of or looked out for if it wasn't for these two guys. And that brings me to the next point. The final point of all of this is what ended up happening with ABOG is we became such great friends, and it was all about us. So the reason the podcast continued on for it going into our 10th year now was the relationships, being together. Format didn't matter as much. That's why at the end we just said, let's just talk about games. Let's just get together. Let's just hang out. Let's keep it simple. Let's not keep our listeners guessing anymore. Let's just focus on games.
Yep, and the best format we went to.
For sure. Met a lot of great people doing this too. Talked about meeting some bands and some musicians and record companies.
Yes.
But got to meet a lot of you. So thank you everybody who took the time to come meet up with us or reach out to us or join our Discord, show up at an MGC. Just had some great interactions with people, and everyone's so kind. Had some amazing experiences through the listeners over the years. That's one of the things I'm going to miss. But the Discord, we'll keep, as Shane mentioned last episode, we'll keep going. That thing is free. So we'll stay in there and still have a way to hook up and chit chat. So look us up in Discord if you haven't yet, no matter when you are finding the show. Favorite episodes? Who wants to go first?
I think Karl does.
Yeah, I can if you like. Shane was willing me on there. I think for me, hang on. For some reason, my camera's gone full screen. I'm breaking the fourth wall here. I think for me, my favourite episode is probably the one where I was asked to come on. Like that was super, super exciting. Like I've always kind of been the person who was always set himself small, achievable goals in life. Like whether it be work or do stuff for charity or gigs, performing. You're setting yourself little attainable targets you have to work for, but that you can achieve. And when I was listening to Joel before on PS Nation, he was on quite a few years ago now, and I loved that show. Loved Joel in particular, and the other guy Josh who was on it, because they both had very cool, unique voices. Like it's funny how you start listening to a show and you're just like, oh yeah, this guy sounds great. Like Joel was super articulate and very good at enunciating and just great voice for radio. And Josh sounded like the dude from Knight Rider, the car kit. So I was like, oh, this is my show. And from listening to, it's true though. It is true though, right?
It's so true, dude.
And obviously we'll come to Josh later on, but it was one of those shows that just grabbed me straight away. And then I was part of the community, contributing, emailing, just chatting really, and got chatting to Shane, just talking shit about various bands and whatever else. And I kind of just started writing video game reviews and things like that. Just wanted to get involved, really enjoyed it, something I wanted to do. And yeah, man, when they asked me to come on as like a guest on episode 47, it was just super, super like nerve wracking, and I don't tend to get nervous. But it was something I was like, oh man, these guys are really cool. They've got a great show, and hopefully I don't embarrass myself when I go on there. And it just felt like putting a pair of shoes on. It just felt so natural and so easy to talk to both of you that everything I'd talked to you about in messaging or anything else, whether it was emails or Twitter, whatever, it seemed to slip into the same mold. Nothing was difficult. It just seemed very natural. And we went from there really, and it just seemed like something I'd hoped to do someday, to do, be on the podcast or be involved in video games, not like never as a career, because I've got a career, but definitely wanted to get involved and do something with it. And then I was lucky at that, get two of the best friends, I could have one. So it's been just, that episode for me, when I go to it and I think about it, I'm just like, that was just the best.
47, hey?
Yeah, and then you were back on shortly after that, because that was in the summer, and then you were back on. You had you back on for the favorites of the year.
Yes,
and we were all together on that episode. And then it was like, I think it went by a little bit where you weren't on, and then you were back on again, and then it was like, all right, he's the guy. He's the the third.
Third wheel, yeah.
Not the third wheel, no, but like the power trio, and then it was just, you can't not, it was just such a such a perfect fit, really.
Yeah, we weren't looking for a third, right? Shane and I were feeling pretty comfortable, pretty happy with how things were going. Him and I were really gelling, and then Karl Karl fit in so well. It's like I just remember Shane and I chatting like. Wasn't a long conversation. It's like, why don't we have Karl on every week? Like this makes too much sense. He fits in great. We get along with him, and he added so much to the conversation.
Yeah, like because I think Karl and I we started that was back when we started playing FIFA together. It was like before he was on, and just talking, Oasis and Britpop and the 90s, all that jazz, and it was. It was just a no-brainer. And I think I just kept mentioning to Joel, like, dude, this guy's a fucking legend, and it just worked itself together, the stars aligned, and it couldn't have worked out any better, really. And I think for number 47, Karl's first one on there is also like one of my favorites as well, because in all fair, Karl saved ABOG. I don't think the listeners realize it. Joel and I were rolling pretty damn well for a long time, but just having that different perspective and somebody who is, much more into, gaming and, having a little bit more, PC influence and personal computer, not, politically correct. Believe you me. If you heard some of it, no, it was just a perfect fit. And, who knows what would have happened or when the last show would have been, had Karl not been a part of this. I don't think it would have gone on nearly as long as, we have. I don't think we'd be having this episode, obviously.
I never thought of it that way, but you're right. There's no way we would have lasted this long without Karl.
No
question. Not that we weren't getting 100%. Along great and everything was going. It's just there's so much more content between three guys with varying interests. And Karl's obviously fantastic at doing this, and he's got a great podcasting voice himself, right? Like
well enough.
No crying. This is they're celebrating.
No, he's got a beer. You just chugged the beer, and now, right?
Oh yeah, chug the beer to do the beers at the beginning, but now it's just going to kick in. It's going to be great. It's going to be a ride. So that's my favorite. Like, who's going next? What do we reckon, boys? What's the next one?
I think Shane just did. He said one of his favorites is 47, right?
True.
Yeah, and I'm gonna come in with one of my favorite. I don't have a favorite. I don't think I just have a list of a few favorites. But on that list is the episode when Shane joined and the episode when Karl joined. So 47 for when Karl first sat in, and episode 22 is when Shane first joined. And that was a great episode. And a little bit of a story there. Shane played community games with myself, and I'm sure Karl was probably around. I don't know if at the very, very beginning, but shortly thereafter, we were all playing online. And after my co-host quit, which I think was episode 19, after that episode,
19
I did 20 and 21 with special guests. We had Trickman Terry on one of them, and I think Drive for Six was on a different, as a community name, on a different episode.
Yeah. And
then actually Drive for Six is the one who recommended Shane to me. He's like, hey, do you know Skippy Nicks? I'm like, of course, we play Killzone. He's like, well, have you ever considered having him on as like a guest, you know? I'm like, no, I never did. Then reached out and he sat in and that was it. Like, okay,
Right.
Do you want to be the new co-host? Because you're really good at this, Shane. And we just hit it off really well. And we both like music. We had a lot of similar interests. And I don't even regard the first 21 episodes. I mean, they're there. You can still listen to them. But to me, the show began at 22. That's when ABOG, as we know it today, that's when it launched. Everything up to that point is like test drive.
Test drive. It's true.
Became legal.
So those,
and the weird thing is before episode 22, the first one that Joel had me on. Yeah, well, I was involved in the community nights every Sunday at 5 Pacific, 7 Standard or Central, and I would just hop in and we would just have a blast and whatnot. But Joel and I never really had talked.
Mm-mm.
I think we had like a little like warm up like a couple days before we recorded that, and just to kind of go through the motions of what it's like, because I had no idea. I don't have a podcast. I mean, I was yelling into a pine cone, I think, on the the first half a dozen episodes I did.
Cup and string.
But that first episode was like the first real time Joel and I, and it just worked. I mean, just had so much fun. And another one of my favorites was the episode after that, because I was so nervous. We had a few extra drinks back then. We'd have
shocking
backline beers. I think the episode was called, where we had a number of them lined up. I was so nervous, because listening to Joel on PS Nation for so long, and I remember there were some episodes of PS Nation. He'd even bring up music, like a new album he was listening to, and I don't know if he remembers, but I would ping him once in a while with a message like, hey, have you heard this album or whatever? And we just kind of text type thing, message on PlayStation or whatever it was, just a little bit talking about music, and then getting that invite to start guesting a couple episodes was a little bit surreal for me. So the first few, there was a few extra drinks back then, and after the number 23, I believe, is when Joel actually messaged me, asked if I want to do this full time, and kind of rest was kind of history after that. But important episodes,
job, and just that's all.
True.
That's what went through my mind when he said full time. I'm like, we don't know.
Chicks have been rolling in,
right?
Yeah, and it's been a wild experience to go back now and listen. I think especially for us, having lived through this.
Yeah.
But to go back and listen to those earlier episodes, you realize, doing this as long as we have, how raw and rough we were. I mean, a lot of stepping on each other's talking. We didn't do video chats back then. That wasn't really as readily available as it is today. So we'd be in we'd look at the agenda, and we'd hear each other, but we wouldn't see each other.
Yeah.
So it was always this challenge to figure out, when am I going to say something and not step on what Shane is saying? So we had to build a rapport, and the same with Karl. Because we didn't use video back then either when Karl joined. But we had to build that rapport, knowing when to talk and when there's going to be spaces there. It's almost like being in a band, kind of building that chemistry. But just how rookie-ish, how young we sound in our craft.
Naive.
Way back then. Now I think really proud of where we ended up and where we are today. Just so different, so much more comfortable in our own shoes, our own podcasting shoes, if that makes sense. Yeah. And Shane, I don't think this is a secret to longtime listeners. It took Shane like 6 years to blossom into feeling comfortable, because he's just kind of more of a protected guy. He's not just I walk up and give you a hug kind of guy. You got to earn your trust with Shane. He's got one of those personalities. So it took us a long time to really kind of get Shane out of his shell. We actually had conversations about this because I could feel it. I'm like, dude, you're holding back. And Shane, I remember there's one thing that I remember from Shane. I'll never forget this. You wanted to tuck your jokes in. You wanted the jokes to be like buried. Very clever. Like to someone who listens, they're going to discover my joke. And I'm like, no, throw it out there. Don't bury it. You got to be completely upfront. And then at one point, I remember Shane said, hey, I will be myself after we all get together for the first time. After that, you're going to get the full Shane. And that's one of my other favorite episodes is the one where we all sat and recorded together. That is episode 189.
Because
Better Together.
Because you guys had already, hooked up, quote unquote, we'll say.
Yeah, it sounds weird.
Because you guys had already met, and it's just like
just once at an MGC.
But it's like meeting somebody in person. I mean, you just have there's a different feel after that. Like I noticed that, like with customers, after I do inside sales and whatnot, and after meeting somebody in person, the relationship's a little bit different afterwards. It's a little bit more, it's a bit more comfortable and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And I was really hoping for that same kind of experience because I could sense that with you guys. You guys had a little bit more of that, and I wanted to feel a little bit of that. So that's, I think, where that thinking came from. And then afterwards, sniffing each other's farts and all this, having too many drinks and whatnot, just having a great time. Then it was, the bar's officially open. Then it was, a different ball game and whatnot. At least like it felt for me, just, breaking down that door a bit. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
No, that makes total sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so 189, Better Together. That's where the three of us were in Vancouver together, went out and saw Shane. Karl had come to his second MGC, so that was the second time I think, Karl, you and I had ever met in person.
Yeah.
And then we flew out to Vancouver after Midwest Gaming Classic was over, after my obligations for the weekend, my little work that I was doing there, volunteering, was over, and spent the whole week with Shane. And we recorded an episode 189, in the same room, the one and only time we recorded, and it will be the only one where we sat all in the same room and recorded an episode together. Special episode to me. Yeah. One of my favorites.
Yeah, for sure, dude. It was one of my favorites as well. I'll put that down. And it was great to see. And Shane's right. When you do see somebody face to face, and obviously we've if you think about the hours that we've talked together over this period of time, it's massive. And I always say to Faye, I'm like, we talk about having best mates and the people that you talk to the most. And it really helped me with the Pandini. When that came in, and people are saying, man, how'd you this whole video calling, this whole Skype, this Teams, and I'm like, man, I talk to my two best mates on video. I have done for years. This is just nothing different. This is the norm, really. But it is a completely different vibe to meeting somebody for the first time. I know when I met Joel for the first time, picked me up from the airport, and it was hilarious and great. We just sat in the car and we just talked crap, went and had a beer, and it just felt like I'd known him for years. And the same with Shane. We met Shane at the airport, and it was like, dude, and it's just like instantly, let's kind of a beer. Just great friendships have been built up over this period of time, and doing that in the same room, and just getting the mics hooked up, and just the whole setup of it, and just crashing in the same house. It's just a really, really great lead up into that episode. Yeah, definitely was one of my favourites as well. Another one of my favourites, they are cumulative, is the EGX episodes that were recorded. And
yes,
and again, when we talk about getting involved in an industry, that was when I kind of felt like I was actually part of that industry. Getting press passes for events and going down and talking to devs and interviewing people, doing a load of stuff around in the background, and you kind of feel like you've been part of a community, part of a greater thing, and getting a chance to go on a load of other podcasts and meet a lot of other people. It's just been a great ride. Like that stuff's been really, really fun, and then to report back on that, it felt like it was a kind of a proper little side hustle. it was really good. I really enjoyed those. But again, happy that I don't have to do those anymore, especially with COVID and all the rest of it. But yeah, I did enjoy, giving felt like a little on-field reporter, just giving a little feedback after the events. That was cool.
I forgot about those EGX episodes. Very in-depth. Karl would do so much work, in quotes, there, going to these events and getting all the coverage. And those episodes were just all Karl, pretty much. Shane and I would just sit and listen, like in fascination, like, oh my God, you saw what game? And just to hear all the experiences and all the people you got to meet listeners at that event. Definitely one of the more special moments of all this. A lot of special moments come from those listeners who took the time and effort to reach out and say, hey, I listen and I really like your show. Or to walk up to you at an EGX or me at an MGC and just say, hey, thank you for what you do. I love that. Because over the last few years, the show is about us, right? It's about us hanging out. We certainly want to put good content out. We always have done our best to make it as entertaining as possible. But at the end of the day, it was all about us. We never, and part of why we might be ending it now is we never played the games it takes to be successful in podcasting, which nowadays is way more difficult. So these guys mentioned how I was on PS Nation, and I was on there for a couple years, way back, 2008, 2003, like no, it was like 2010 through 2012 or so, a couple years. And I had guested on quite a few, going back even further. Glenn from PS Nation was part of my community. I mean, he was local. So I was listening to that show and I reached out like, holy shit, you're a couple cities from me. Like, wow, small world shit. I had no idea. And I got to meet him at a Midwest Gaming Classic and got to know him a little bit, got to sit in a few episodes and eventually become part of that show. And I completely lost my train of thought and where I'm going with this. Son of a bitch.
But you had some time on there and a lot of exposure on that podcast that was
there. It is
quite influential for quite some time.
That's it. Thanks for bringing me back. So back then, when I was on PS Nation, there wasn't that many video game podcasts. So to do what we were doing had this instant audience. And I started doing it because my hand was bothering me. I couldn't play guitar for a while. I felt like there's a gaping hole in my life of entertaining people and being creative and doing all these things. Joined that show and had a bigger audience on PS Nation than I ever did on stage playing a gig. I'm like, this is amazing. Holy crap. But fast forward to like today where you've got YouTube and Twitch and all of these different social media outlets and different video streams and stuff available. There's a million, billion, trillion gaming podcasts now. In order to be successful, you have to work your frickin' ass off you have to have like clickbait kind of show titles. You got to be like the reaction guy on YouTube. You got to stream everything constantly. You got to make your life like this gaping head wound to everybody and just share everything. We don't want to do any of that crap. We're like, no, we're going to do it. We're going to do it our way. And if it doesn't work, well, fuck it. It's just about us three getting together. And I respect that Shane and Karl kind of grounded me in that regard. Because at first, I was the guy who was just annoyingly wanting us to do everything it took to be the next big thing. Because I was already used to being kind of on a show that had a ton of listeners. Again, because there wasn't a lot of shows back then. Everybody realized, well, I just have a headset mic and I can hit record and I can do a podcast. And then a bunch of celebrities started doing podcasts. And now it's just such a changed landscape.
Oh,
but we never.
And that's exactly it. And that's what's killed podcasts was celebrities starting to do them. And it killed the core of what podcasts are about. We're about people that were just really into whatever kind of a topic that they love. They're just, nerds for anything. Could hit record and share information with people that also had shared the same passions and hobbies and whatnot. And now it's kind of you can't really. There's only so far you can go with it, and it's not anywhere near you used to be able to 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah, and it's about doing it for you, innit? And doing it for the right reasons. So, the three of us were all. We're a little older on the spectrum, right? So the idea of doing a video game podcast or streaming or anything like that is not going to be a career, right? It's not going to be something that you're like, this is going to be my bread and butter because, we're already so far into the the cycle of work and retirement. You know what I mean? So you're well along your way of just being in a career and whatever else. And it comes a time when you are doing a project, whatever it might be. And with me, it hit with music when I was young, and then it hits with something like this. There comes a point where you have to draw the line and say, well, what am I willing to do in my own time to add to this and to do, because it's a hobby. You have to underline and say, that it is a hobby and it's one that we enjoy, and we enjoy getting together and having a beer. It's brilliant. But you do have to take your foot off the gas and just say, actually, it's pretty great as it is. And there's no need to worry too much about doing a lot of the stuff, the fluffy stuff, like Joel said, that we just, we weren't going to do. We're never going to be that show like, yes, I'm going to quit the day job and become a full-time podcaster, because that's not, and for me personally, it's not the goal I set myself. With anything that I've done, it's the work is the work, that's over there, and that's great, and the rest is stuff on the side, and you just do the bits you can do and enjoy it.
Or just doing social media, which we don't even do that hardly.
Oh no. Right. But we have met some wonderful people on social media, and we have got a great Discord server with wonderful people in it. And I'll pop on Twitter every now and again. There's great people on there too. But unfortunately, there's also a lot of people who aren't great on there. It's one of these things that you just have to take the rough with the smooth.
The closest thing we ever had to a clickbait kind of title, and this happened but completely by accident. My stepfather loathes Jeff Lynne. Loathes him. Not my stepfather, my wife's stepdad. So he's a stepdad-in-law, I guess. He loathes Jeff Lynne, and he just constantly rips on Jeff Lynne. And it's funny, like the stuff he says and the names he calls him. Glommer. Look at a good record, and there he is, glomming on, riding somebody else's coattails. And we had this conversation in one of our music chats, Shane and I, episode 46. It's called Jeff Lynne's 100 billionth number one. And we just went on, we kind of made a joke along with my stepdad-in-law about Jeff Lynne. And that title, for whatever reason, is like SEO, hit search engines. That episode has the most listens, I believe, out of all of our podcast episodes, except for like the first couple episodes, which when you find a show, you always go back to the beginning. So that gets a bunch of downloads. But it being kind of in the middle of our timeline, episode 46 has a ton of listens, a ton of downloads, because in the title, we got Jeff Lynne's name. And the amount of emails we got, people defending Jeff Lynne. And especially as we started to interact with different musicians, we'd start to have these conversations like, hey, I really like your show. I appreciate you playing my song, but what the fuck is wrong with you guys not liking Jeff Lynne? The guy's a genius.
Right?
Genius.
I don't know about your opinion about Jeff Lynne, though.
A lot of people love Jeff Lynne. Yeah. So that's one of my favorite episodes, not because of any of the content. Well, a little bit of the content. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But that title and the amount of people coming at us in the music community like, hey, you guys are great, but what's up with your stance on Jeff Lynne? You're completely wrong about Jeff Lynne.
No. Not at all.
I concur.
That was a fun episode. I do remember that one. Because I've never ever understood how he's been remotely successful. And I'm glad I found somebody else, Joel, that also had that same opinion, which was brilliant. And, we ran with it. That show was great.
So unintended to use it as a clickbait title. There was no such thing as clickbait back in episode 46, but we used his name in the title, and lo and behold, we got a bunch of hits on it. We also had the music. That's back when we were playing tunes, and the combination of tunes on that episode are fantastic. Direct Hit, Buried Alive, on that episode, and Direct Hit became become big fans of those guys. Joseph Huber, Coming Down From You, love that song. One of my all-time favorite songs in that episode. So if you go back, listen to episode 46, you can hear that in there. And then Boston Manor, All Tight, which Shane brought to the show. Man, what a great song. And those are three great songs in that one episode. Episode 46, Jeff Lynne's 100 billionth number one. Good one.
Absolutely lovely. talk about podcasts and episodes where we talked about music. And one of my absolute favourites was it was a disaster, really, but it was just a fun disaster because we'd kind of, we got cancelled episode 150. We had a little break, and we came back, and me and Shane were on episode 155, which is called Biblical. And Joel was busy, I think, so we talked some games, and we ended up talking loads about Oasis. And I think Noel Gallagher had just released what did he just release?
Yes,
at that point in time.
Who Built the Moon?
Who Built the Moon? Yeah. Album before last, was it? So we were talking about that, and I'd also watched the Supersonic documentary, and we were just chatting away,
Yes.
just beers, and brilliant talk, chatting, and because there was no Joel there to say, Karl, you sound weird. Me and Shane were just drinking and recording, and I'm like, yeah, it's great. And then we're like messaging Joel after the show, dude, it was a great show. Yeah, be banger this one, Will. And then he messages me, and Joel's like, what were you recording through your audio? And of course, there's me recording through my camera microphone rather than my actual microphone for the whole episode. So that was one of them where you just think, oh God. And it was just such a funny thing, when you look back on it now, and it just instantly nothing makes you check your settings before you record every week than fucking up on one episode. Because believe me, you're like, right, okay, everything. I've got a green light and everything. Let's go. And it took something like that, really, but it just made me smile. Whenever I go back and listen to that episode in particular, I just hear my audio and I just cry. I just think, oh God. But hey ho, you live and learn, right?
True.
Yeah, but it was such great content that we ran with it, right? Like, it may not sound the best, but it was such a good conversation. We had to put it out there.
Yeah, we did.
And I was always the police with the audio. Early on we did we would count in 3, 2, 1, and we all hit 1 at the same time, hit record. And then I would sync up the 3 audio tracks in post, in edit. And I'd have 3 separate audio tracks. And there'd be some drift because of computer clocks variance and things like that. And I would painstakingly, meticulously edit the shows. And back years ago, I'd probably edit one episode for like 8 hours, 10 hours. I would take out all the ums. I sometimes would remove the breathing. I learned not to do that eventually. But then to just make sure everything was always aligned and sounded right, pulling out the dead space. There was a ton of work that went in early on. And I sort of learned nowadays, and for years now, I record everything here. That's why you sometimes hear latency when you're listening. And we had a little bit of latency in this episode, not bad, but I record everything directly through our video chat. Now we have 1 audio file. No need for me to line up 3. And it became all about, I put a lot of pressure on these guys with how they were to speak. It was like I felt like I was trying to coach them almost. Not that they needed coaching, but that's who I thought I was at the time. Because I didn't want to edit for 8 to 10 hours. I'm like, please be ready with what you're going to say and know what you're going to say and have it in the agenda. And do you remember all the pressure I put on you guys? Nicely, I hope.
Nope.
But yes, you do. but we've gotten so good at it now that, I don't have to edit shit, really. Everything just flows so well. And these 2 guys are so good at doing this. And all of us together are so good at doing this that rarely do I edit anything out of the show. We've had live recordings essentially for years and years and years now, just like this episode is, and like a lot of them have been. But that we got to that point to be able to do that through some hard work. We worked really hard to sort of refine our craft. I listen to a lot of video game podcasts, and we've had a few friends along the years like, I can do a podcast too. And I listen to some of those, and I'm like, oh God. You really got to do the work. And I don't think people realize kind of the behind the scenes, but there's a lot of hard work has gotten us to this point. I mentioned earlier, going back and listening to how weird it sounds way back when. Now we're just ourselves. It's all live. It's all fresh. It's just a regular old conversation, the 3 of us, as if you're just listening to us chatting at a bar. But I love that we got to that point. Speaking of editing, another one of my favorite episodes, episode 92, I believe. Let me check my notes here. 92, we had Brett Newski on the show. So Brett, local musician, Shane and I were on with him on that episode. He came to my house. That was a challenge. Was used to only doing it over like the computer, but he's like, "Oh, I want to come to your house and do it." I'm like, "Okay, great." So I had to set up a microphone on a table, and we piped Shane in, and we all did the show. Great episode. We had like an hour with Brett Newski. There's a story in that episode. There's a story in that episode never saw the light of day about him throwing a dildo onto a basketball court at a high school game. Just an amazing conversation. Love that episode. We were done. I'm like, hey, chatted with Brett a bit, sent him on his way, listened to the audio. It was loaded with clicks. Just click, 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 click. The audio was unusable, completely unusable. But it was just an amazing conversation. And we're like, you can't re-record that episode. You can't make him come back and ask him the same questions. And it's like, well, shit, what are we going to do? And I had maybe like 10 minutes of audio that turned out okay before it turned into a really nightmarish click sort of recording. And I had like my proudest moment as far as editing is that episode 92. So if you go back and listen, I play song bits in between the very little audio I have with Brett in the interview. We kind of intertwine it with audio with his music and ended up having a decent episode out of it. But it was really like 10 minutes of usable audio from an hour-long conversation that through some really hard production work for all the production stuff I had learned in doing this podcast, 92 episodes at that point, we're able to put together a really good episode. So I'm really proud of that one from a production. I never put so much work into 10 minutes of audio in my entire life. And put like fading in and out the music and everything. Really, really love one of my favorites, episode 92, Brett Newski. Plus, he's just an amazing dude. He's still going, putting out albums, just put out a book dealing with like depression during like the pandemic or just depression in general and kind of being mentally strong. Great guy. So landmark episode, in my opinion, in ABOG's history, episode 92, Brett Newski.
Jill, do you remember the episode with you and I? And I think we had to record it 3 times that one night.
Oh God, yeah.
Because like the first go through, we finished like, oh yeah, great show, whatever. And then I get a text, it's like, oh, there's something mess with one of the mics or whatever. So then we had to when we came back and re-recorded it that night. This was back on it was like a Tuesday night or something. Stay up, and then there was something wrong with that track, and we ended up having to record it 3 times. And I think each time we did it, it was like word for word the same way we did the first episode. It was just like a couple of robots. We knew exactly what we were saying because we rehearsed the episode twice before, it felt like. But yeah, there's one, you can get all sorts of mischief or whatnot that happens when going to edit. And thankfully we got to the point where we did, and it's, I think ever since about 150 or so when we came back and did that, and it was just kind of like, let's just let it fly,
Yeah.
There's some buttes.
Well, people have always commented on how good the audio is on the show as well. It's one of the first things that everybody always says to me is just how good it sounds. Like it genuinely does sound like you're all sat in the same room. So, kudos.
True.
Yeah, well, that's just the hard work of everybody here. Everything, all the work we put in on being prepared and having an agenda, but still keeping it as a conversation. We only have bullet points in our agenda. It's just I want to hit on this topic, or I want to hit on this note about a game, but it's all just a fresh conversation. And I've gotten good at processing the audio and making it sound decent. Yes. But ultimately, the reason it sounds so good is not only the equipment we use. We each have really. We started off with you guys using like headset microphones, right?
Basically, yeah.
And eventually, you got to a point like I am at, or was for a while, with a microphone into an audio interface. We actually use proper music microphones. So we're not using headset microphones. We're not using those USB ones you can get at Best Buy. We're using actual XLR plugged in microphones into an audio interface into our computer. I think that's part of the high quality. But then this device I use to record it, and then the processing that we do, a little bit of production, a little bit of EQing that occurs to make it sound as good as it does.
Oh yeah. And all that's a journey too, isn't it? Like I think you're right. Like when I came in on that first episode and I had a headset microphone, and then I was like, man, I need a proper microphone to do this show justice. And I got like a snowball, a blue snowball, and I built a little cube which had some audio, the insulating foam. Packed that out, and I just had that in there so that there'd be no reverberations and stuff. Still wasn't good enough. Upgraded that to a Yeti, and then I ended up with proper setup. So again, it's like it's you live and learn as you go through. So you reach a point where it all becomes a lot easier, and then your big battle is time and motivation for the love of gaming and the love of everything else, whatever else is going on in your life. But there's been some great episodes there.
Yeah, we got one more on the list there on Shane's list that we have to bring up.
I was going to say the episode when we had Josh Langford on, after he was, how do I put this nicely? Let's say no longer a member of the station, which was pretty abrupt, Mm-hmm. Never got a proper farewell on that show, and it has been one of my favorites, not only because he got to share a mic with such a influential podcaster as himself, but also to lend him a mic to finally have that farewell, and that was really important. I know we talked about it quite a bit in that. I think there was like a week span in between, and the guy deserved a lot more than what he was handed, and it was an honor to just share that episode with him.
Yeah, man,
definitely
really
one
well,
of my
didn't
favorites.
That was
it
felt great when we recorded that as well. Like it again, you slotted in super well. It just felt natural.
Yeah, we were never looking for a fourth, but if we ever would have added a fourth, he probably would have been one we would have asked, because he did fit in really well with us.
Yeah,
three guys. We were pretty stubborn about always having it the three of us. I mean, that it became a rule, internal ABOG policy. Yes. If us three can't be there, there's no show. But that was a great episode. That's episode 190, called it Josh.
190.
But Josh is always great to chat with and hang out with, and
fun fact,
it felt good to have him on and give him an opportunity, like Shane said.
I don't think you could hear it, but I had the absolute worst hangover of my life that day. And I was lit like you guys are getting ready, going on, and I'm just kind of like just sitting here, just holding my head. I hadn't even entered the chat yet. I'm like, how am I going to do this? And
waiting for the room to stop spinning.
Oh, it was absolutely the worst. Like, I probably contemplated, like, do you guys mind taking this one or whatnot? And I just like, no. This was too important. It's too big. And as soon as I got in there and started rolling, it was done, no problem. And it was just a great experience. And yeah, definitely one of my favorites that we did, just because it to me it meant a lot. No, like I said, nobody deserves what happened to him, especially in this quote unquote industry of podcasting and whatnot. And we all had agreed it was we need to do this and whatnot, and so that'll always be a really important one to all of us, really.
Hell yeah. And talk about having too many beers. Do you two remember? And this is going back a little bit, a couple of years now. Do you know when we were scheduled to record and Villa played blues on the Sunday, and I went out and got hammered, and then fell asleep and missed the recording session, right?
Yes, let's
go. And you were, I woke up and I had like missed calls from Joel and Shane, just like, you were right, dude. Like, what's happening? We're recording or whatever. And so like, and I wake up and I'm like, oh shit, and I can manage it. I'll get a beer. I'll record. And I think I recorded with you till like 1 a.m. my time or something like that. And
yeah.
It was just an absolute disaster from me. I just had far too many beers, and we smashed the blues.
Brilliant.
And I just missed loads of messages, loads of calls, and you two were just there going, "Where's he gone? What's going on?"
So I remember I just texted you like Canadian flags to a UK number and whatnot, just hoping.
Yeah, I think we were like genuinely worried, because I mean, we like clockwork get together, and you weren't around, and it's like we're actually calling the UK. Like, where is Karl?
Yeah,
what is going
Calling
on?
the Queen.
Where's our friend? You're halfway across the world. I can't walk down to your house and check on you. So it's like we're just trying to come up with every different way of getting in touch with you, and you weren't around. And it was actually kind of scary. Like, where the hell's Karl? Like, he would never miss this in a million years. Yeah, he just got too drunk and fell asleep.
Yep. Yep. Still woke up and smashed it though. In all fairness, sobered me up real quick. That did.
Karl, you are a pro, and there's been quite a few, a couple episodes. Let's say I don't want to say that you're an alcoholic or anything, but there's a couple episodes where you had quite a few beers, rolled up, and performed like on the show as if you didn't. I give you a lot of credit. Yes. I can't sit here and do this being buzzed up. Now, if I have a couple shows on the show, and get towards the end of the show and are a little buzzed up, that works. You know, it's just kind of how we do it. But to show up already, be buzzed, and perform and do your thing like tight as if you weren't, that's amazing. You are a very good drinker, my friend. You're a pro.
Yeah, it's true.
Some great moments there. It's putting this list together was easy. It all just came out. I think for me, I believe you guys sort of feel the same way. Putting this list together, you knew right off the top of your head your favorite episodes, but some of the best episodes aren't significant. They're just us talking, and there's 100 or so of those episodes that feel just fantastic. Looking at the last 2 years since we kind of relaunched, all those shows have been amazing. I didn't put them on my list of favorites, but I could have, because they've all been just fantastic conversations. We've had some great Xbox and PlayStation chats, some really awesome kind of console war kind of chatter that I've absolutely loved. And as we look at putting the show to rest and going to phase 2 of our relationship, hanging out and doing other things, still connecting on a regular basis and hanging out, just not recording, I'm going to miss the hell out of those conversations. And I'm sure we'll still have them. But I'm really proud of how we brought the video game talk. We had some really good, thoughtful conversations on console wars and consoles and games and E3. And so a lot of favorite moments that weren't on this list, but just were still very great episodes that I'm super proud of.
Amen.
On that note, raise my glass. Are we ready now to share what we're drinking?
I think so.
Okay.
I think so. But thank you for Cuddly Knife for recommending that subject, because we've talked on that for ages, haven't we? So
yes. Yeah, thank you, Cuddly Knife. Cuddly Knife is how I got started in video game conversations. I owned my own business with my wife, and I was on a forums called videogamereview.com, where you could go and review video games. Right? Kind of what we did there at the very beginning of ABOG. And just like while I was working, would hang out with all these dudes just to pass time. Barzanek, Dave, was one of the guys in that community. Cuddly Knife, his real name is BJ. He's on Facebook, and he recommended this conversation on our Facebook group, ABOG podcast, I think it is on Facebook. So thank you to BJ. But videogamereview.com, where it all got started. And it met some just amazing people. And this is back in the early aughts. People I still talk to this day. So looking forward to continuing our relationships with all of these great listeners we've met well beyond a website or a podcast. And I'm sure that'll happen, just like with Cuddly Knife here. And one of the best usernames ever, right? Cuddly Knife.
Oh, yeah.
Love that.
Without a doubt.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
And and if, like Cuddly Knife, if there's something that you want to suggest to us, if there's a topic you want us to talk about, you've got 2 episodes left. Feel free, drop us a note, send us an email, and ask us a question. We'll have a chat about it.
Last chance.
We've got a great email we want to read here. But before that, what we're drinking. I've got to run and get mine, so you guys got to get it started.
All right.
Wow.
Because I've already
finished.
finished.
Do you want to do rock, paper, scissors for it, Shane?
Nope. I will grab the proverbial... I yesterday went to Parallel 49, favorite brewery, as usual, to stock up on some beer for a bit. It's about a half hour away, so get down there, stock up. And while I was there, I noticed they had one of my favorite beers from them, Old Boy, which is a brown ale, much like a Newcastle Brown, but basically have like a craft version of that. Okay. Now, a few years ago in their Christmas Advent calendar, where they would have like a one-off special type beers in there, they did one called Oak Boy, which is that beer aged in oak barrels. And upon filling up my basket, thinking it was Old Boy, it is actually Oak Boy. So I've been enjoying this oak barrel aged brown ale. It's got one of my favorite pieces of artwork on there from the fine folks at Parallel 49 and Steve Kitchen and Combination 13 artwork. Absolutely incredible talent. And this is actually, Old Boy was like one of the first Parallel beers that I really got into, because I really loved Newcastle Brown. And when I saw they were they did a brown ale, I need to try that. And there was that one, and then Paparazzi, which was another early one that they did, and then Banana Hammock. And by then it was like, holy crap, man, this is some great beers. And they became, my personal favorite brewery, and they've been ever since. And always support them. Great folks down there. So just been enjoying a nice oak barrel aged brown ale. All sorts of. Here's the thing. Like we talk about beers and whatnot. I'm not a big fan of getting into detail about the beers, but we're gonna do it here. This one, it's got notes of caramel, nutmeg, a little bit of spice in there. Take your Nuki Brown, get a little spice in it. Definitely some mocha, some chocolate notes in here as well. All the good stuff. Everything that you want in a proper brown ale. And toss it in an oak barrel for a little bit, and you got a delicious treat here. So very much enjoying this. Very, very happy to see it in the refrigerators. So definitely grabbed a handful, and I've been enjoying a couple yesterday, a couple more today, and maybe a couple in the future as well.
Sounds good.
Good beer.
That looks damn good, dude.
Thank you.
Well, the beer I'm glad I didn't slam it at the beginning of the show, because it's a 10%er, so it's one of those. I was just saying to Shane before we recorded, I've moved house for the upteenth time in my life now, and we're now in like a little village somewhere in the Midlands, and usually Tiny Rebel beers, they're from Newport, I think, down in Wales, and you can get like a certain selection in the supermarket. You get one or two in there. Bowled down to the local off license, and they've just got like a shelf of the great collaborations and like the unique beers that they've got. So I thought I've pounded one already, but luckily it wasn't this. This is called Captain Insano, and on the can here it's got this cartoon, almost like Rocco. Like you remember Rocco's Modern Life? I don't know, it's going back a little bit, but it's got this crazy little dude on there, and he's obviously off his face. Looks stoned / drunk, and this is a triple IPA. Lots of fruit in it, typical citrus stuff, mango, melon, etc. But I love the tagline on the can. It just says, Captain Insano shows no mercy, and this beer does not show any mercy at all. Looking at the color of it, it's proper fruit juice city, real thick,
very thick,
very delicious, and good 6 or 7 quid a can. It's not cheap beer, but pretty good.
Oh,
pretty decent. I've even got it in my Tiny Rebel glass as well, which I stole from the boozer a few years ago. I'm not sure if that's a thing over in Canada and the USA, but obviously, if you see a nice glass, you just put it in the wife's handbag. This is why ladies have a handbag, and out you go. So this is great. Nice strong beer.
I did my jorts.
Your jean shorts. If you've got pockets in them, just waddling out like John Wayne, just don't pat my legs. It's fine. A great little brew this is. And I was just thinking, Shane, you showed that can then from the great people at Parallel. Just reminded me of our logo on my BMA here.
Hey, look at that.
The artworks. It's great, isn't it? The artwork's so good. Another highlight, just when you turn, you threw that artwork out Oh, it's Snap. It's Snap. We've all got,
Yeah,
the ABOG
Coasters.
coasters. Yeah, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, best
What you got,
podcast logo.
Joe?
Best logo in all of video game podcasting right there. Thank you,
Yes,
Shane, for connecting
true.
and putting that together. So awesome. And a combination 13 is his name. Combination 13.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah.
Amazing artwork.
That was wild.
All those parallel 49 cans and many bands and concert posters and stuff that guy does.
Yep.
Awesome
Lots.
follow on Instagram. You guys get the reference though, Captain Insano? Karl's beer. Do you guys know what that's
That's
from?
what I was thinking. Captain Insano.
Yeah. Do you know what that's from? That's a movie reference.
No.
Oh, I don't.
It's a Waterboy. The Adam Sandler movie. Did you ever see Waterboy?
No.
Actually,
Yeah.
I actually like that movie quite a bit. It's funny.
Best of luck on the upcoming play.
That's right. So he called in, Adam Sandler, his character called into a wrestling show, and his favorite wrestler is Captain Insano. And he calls in and he's like talking in his goofy, the way he talks on that show, and they just start laughing at him to his face, like making fun of him for being like a 30-year-old man who's living at home and calling a wrestling show, you know?
And he had that real thick stutter as well.
Totally.
You know, very real southern.
And when he would lose his mind on the football field and get inspiration so he could go attack other people, he'd have that flashback of Captain Insano like laughing at him.
Okay.
I'm assuming that's where they're pulling that from. Unless it's a coincidence.
No idea. They're Welsh. Could be.
Very
Right.
good. Yeah, who knows?
True.
I've got a brew from Eagle Park here in Milwaukee. It's called Heart Races. Some really interesting artwork on the
There we
can. I'm not even quite sure what's going on with that artwork. It's just a pretty average hazy IPA. Not average, it's delicious, but nothing too special other than being a very good hazy. It's 8%. It's delicious.
Whoa.
It's delicious. Oats, wheat, mosaic, and mosaic cryo hops. It's delicious. It's thick, just like Karl's there, and well, Shane's is thick in a much
Yeah.
much browner way, but very
Right.
very good hazy, leaving that sentiment on the side of the glass as you drink it down.
Yeah, some good beers. Man. I've had a lot of good
Just
beers over
chugging
the
it.
years.
Oh,
Right?
I had to
That's
catch
grand
up.
effort.
I had to catch up to these guys chugging one earlier.
Well,
Couldn't get it all down.
chugging at the beginning seems a rather a daft mistake now, but it's never a mistake to chug a beer.
No.
We got this thing at the Bucks games, Milwaukee Bucks here in Milwaukee. They show people in the audience on the big screen during the game, just like a lot of sporting events do, I suppose. But being in Milwaukee and being who we are here in this community, a lot of times when the camera goes to someone and they're holding a beer, they'll chug it. Just chug it completely down. Like, and the audience is like, chug, and just go completely ape shit. And now
Let's go.
there's a couple Packers too, that Green Bay Packers football team that come to the games, and these big burly dudes will also participate. So you just see them like, but these guys, I mean, these guys are like, 250, 6'4", whatever, just giant human beings. They got them lined up. They got the backlined beers where they will just pour down like 2 or 3 in a row. It's fantastic.
Let's go.
So fantastic.
Right?
And then you've got the
Wasn't that
the overweight guy tearing his shirt off. It's another tradition. Not as good.
fucking beauties. I love them. Right?
So, you get that football in this country, particularly up north. Newcastle fans are legendary for it.
Yeah.
Like minus 10 degrees, and they're just out there with the shirt off. Like it's nothing,
Right.
There was a guy at
There's
the
me with like a coat, a hat, gloves, scarf, a bovril.
Last Canadians.
last Bucks game I went to. A guy tore off his shirt and he actually looked good. He's like built, and the audience is like booing him.
Boo. Yeah, I was just thinking that too. Like, boo. Like, oh, like, right?
Where's your beer belly on your
Come
man,
on,
boo?
Exactly.
you gotta be a total fat ass to do that maneuver. What are you doing?
Yeah. You
No-
got to, man.
No
Gotta have a
6-pack
boil.
abs in that situation. Come on, man.
Starts oiling himself up and doing poses.
Exactly, man.
Well, we did get an email. You can
Man.
still continue to email us. We'd love to hear from you before our last two are over. Of course, if you find us after the fact, after we're no longer recording, we'll still have that email. It's abogpod@gmail.com. Those are free. We'll keep paying for that one. send us an email. But we got a nice email here from Ruth, aka Trillion83, on Twitter and in our Discord community server. But she said, "Hey guys, just wanted to say how sad I am to hear that ABOG is coming to an end in the new year. Whilst I totally understand, I am gutted to hear the news. The Pandini, thanks Shane, that's forever what it's called, brought me to yourselves and a few other podcasts, and it has been an absolute pleasure listening to you over the last 20 months or so. Holy shit, the Pandini's been going on that long, hasn't it?
Right.
Ay, ay, ay.
Mm-hmm.
Your voices are friendly and familiar, and they make the working day fly by. You'll be missed, guys, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who thinks so. Take care and take it easy. Looking forward to the next 3. Big love, Ruth." Thank you, Ruth. Appreciate you listening. Appreciate you participating. You're the best.
Absolute queen. Bless her.
Yeah, she's nice. She's one of the great ones, especially on Twitter. One of the few people that you can interact, and they're just wonderful people. Her and her other half, Justin, who does the Last Save Lady podcast, they just like to shack up together, get in the house together. It's lovely. Lovely to see good people, good things happening to good people. So
true.
And thanks for the email. Fantastic.
Yeah, thank you so much. We got 2 more episodes left before we walk off into the sunrise.
Right off into the sunset.
Yeah, thank you.
Red Dead style.
I knew I screwed that up. Do some ironing.
You 2 on a horse, me on an ironing board.
There you go. So we got to figure out what we're going to do on the next 2. We're going to bring back some of the old segments, maybe do an album, maybe play some music. Any ideas for us?
Right.
Drop us a line, abogpod@gmail.com. I'm sure we'll come up with something. We've come up with 251 now, end of this show, episodes of content. So I'm sure we can do 2 more. But going to continue to celebrate this fantastic ride we've had in the next 2 episodes. We will be back in 2 weeks. See you then. Take care. Cheers.
Cheers.
Yeah.